Well, greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to another VC Friday. This is probably going to be the one that nobody watches because you're all going to be out doing Black Friday record store day things and hopefully coming home with armloads of exclusive vinyl. I'm not going to be participating myself, not that there aren't some cool items on offer, but I just have other plans for my dollars right at the moment. So instead, I will be showing you some records that I picked up over the past week at my local shop, Vinyl Solution, starting with this album, Tabernacle, by the Dutch guitarist Jan Akkerman from Focus. This is a 1973 release. Came out between the Focus albums Focus 3 and Hamburger Concerto. It is on the Atco label. And it is primarily an album of lute music from the Renaissance. Akkerman plays a lot of music, particularly by British composers of the Elizabethan period. He has music by John Dowland, by Anthony Holborn, by Thomas Morley, all from that Elizabethan scene. But then he also does a remake of the Focus tune House of the King, and while most of the album is acoustic, it's mostly him playing the lute, and accompanied by a small orchestra on many of the tracks. On House of the King, he's accompanied by a rhythm section, which consists of none other than Tim Bogert and Carmine Appice, or Appice, or Apici, or whichever pronunciation you prefer. I know he is used to people pronouncing it every which way, but of course they are the rhythm section of Vanilla Fudge, Cactus, and Beck, Bogert, and Appice fame. The album continues on, well, with side one being mostly that British lute music, and side two beginning with another lute piece from Italy this time by Lawrencini of Rome, a piece just titled A Fantasy. And then the album makes a complete left turn into a 14-minute prog fusion raga rock avant classical extravaganza that just completely goes over the top. It's a mind blower. Great track titled Lammy. And it is written in collaboration with George Flynn, who plays harpsichord on many of the tracks on this album. It also features the rhythm section of Bogert and Appice, as well as the other drummer, George Flynn, who plays on some tracks of this album, as well as the orchestra, as well as chorus. So it's quite an impressive bit of very out there prog goodness from Jan Akkerman from 1973. The album is Tabernacle. It's a gatefold sleeve. And there you go. Next up, from 1972, this album by Savoy Brown, Hellbound Train. This is the second album by Savoy Brown with Dave Walker as lead vocalist. The previous album, Street Corner Talking, had been the first and was the first album made after all the previous members of Savoy Brown, other than Kim Simmons, left to form Foghat. So Kim Simmons had to assemble a completely new Savoy Brown lineup, and did that very successfully on Street Corner Talking, which contained the great single Tell Mama, not to be confused with Etta James' Tell Mama, and their covers of Wang Dang Doodle, very sinister, brooding sound on that, and an unusual arrangement of the Temptations' I Can't Get Next to You. This album, I feel, is not quite as successful as the previous album. Great gatefold cover art and sort of underground comics look to the inner spread, but this is one you can really kind of pore over while enjoying the music. Very detailed artwork by David Anstey. Savoy Brown, we think of them as a blues rock band, and this is very bluesy, but not actually blues. There are no, blues changes songs on here, but it is just very cool, mostly slower tempo, hard rock that fits in well with Spooky Tooth or Robin Trower, that kind of British hard rock with a sort of brooding feel to it. Particular highlights on this album are the last track on each side, Troubled by These Days and Times, and the lengthy, jammed out Hellbound Train title track, which on this original copy of the album, on the Parrot label, does have the abrupt cutoff. When they remastered this for CD, they gave it a fade out, but this one ends abruptly as nature intended. Finally, a couple from the bargain classical bin. First, music by Béla Bartók, the great Hungarian composer, and this, they kind of hide the actual title of the album, which is A Timid Soul's Approach to Bartók. And you'll notice that somehow the word souls there is in a smaller font size than the surrounding words. So it looks like, did they substitute that for some other word? I don't know what's going on there. It's very odd. They're kind of, as I say, concealing the fact that this album has a title at all. It's mostly just Bartók with George Sandor on piano, a Hungarian pianist with a classically Hungarian name to play the music of the classically Hungarian Béla Bartók. And a particular notable, and I'm not sure why you need a timid soul's approach to Bartók. I think the implication is that Bartók's music is so harsh and forbidding that it's going to scare people off. And so this piano music is a more easy listening version of Bartók. And I don't think that Bartók is really that scary for the contemporary listener. It's on the Turnabout label. But the track that is particularly notable to us rock and roll guys is Allegro Barbaro. And this is the piece of music that Keith Emerson swiped for the track The Barbarian on the first Emerson, Lake and Palmer album and got in a lot of trouble because he didn't think he had to credit the music. He assumed it was in the public domain, which certainly was not. So he got in a bit of trouble sticking that music. It's basically the middle section of the Barbarian is the Allegro Barbaro from Bartók. So we'll hear a bit of that. Finally, the music of one of my very favorite composers of all time, Gustav Mahler, and his Symphony No. 4 in G major. This is a Columbia Masterworks recording conducted by George Szell, one of the great American conductors. Born in Hungary with the name George Szell, so that name George is popping up again. And he was born in Hungary, but settled in America in 1939 after the outbreak of war in Europe made that not such a healthy place for him to be. So he became the conductor of the Cleveland Orchestra from 1946 until his death in 1970. And along the way, he recorded this LP for Columbia with the gray label and lots of scuffs and scratches, so I don't think this album is actually staying in my collection, but it was cool to hear because I like to hear different interpretations of all the Mahler symphonies. I have quite a number of different recordings of all of them, and the fourth is a particularly accessible one. This is one that's one of the gateways for Mahler for a lot of people. It's the briefest of Mahler's symphony. It's still fairly lengthy. It's on this recording we've got 26, 46, 56. This album is over 57 minutes long, but it's still not quite as long. Well, it's about the same as the first symphony, but all the others are longer. Many of them require 2 LPs to fit. But it's also very accessible musically. It's in the standard 4-movement symphonic form, which Mahler did not always follow. Sometimes his symphonies would have as many as 6 movements, as in the third, or as few as 2 movements, as in the 8th. But this one has that standard 4-movement form, beginning with a lovely sonata form movement that has, I feel, I picture a kind of Christmas card scene when listening to the first movement. I picture an Eastern European village blanketed in snow and children with sleds and puffs of smoke coming out of cozy little Eastern European houses. So that's the first movement. The second movement is very sinister because it's sort of a picture of death. Not death as in the concept of death, but the figure of the Grim Reaper playing a violin. So there is a solo violin part played here by Raphael Druyan, and the violin is tuned a tone higher than normal tuning, which gives it a thin and brittle sound. And when I've seen the piece performed, the violinist will have, the solo violinist will have the extra violin, it's called scordatura, when you mistune a violin like that. So he'll have the scordatura violin sitting on a chair or a stand, and he'll play his normal violin for the other three movements and then switch to the nasty sounding devil Grim Reaper violin for the solo part, the scherzo of the Fourth Symphony. Then there's a very lengthy adagio, or poco adagio. It's marked with the description peaceful, ruhevoll. And finally, the vocal piece, because this is one of Mahler's what they call the Wunderhorn symphonies, where he takes inspiration from Des Knaben Wunderhorn, the famous collection of German folk poetry. And the final movement of this takes from that a child's vision of heaven. And the vocal part is taken by the soprano Judith Raskin. And it's a very lovely performance of that, and brings the whole thing to a very sweet close. So it's generally a very happy and sweet symphony, with only the devil music in the second movement creating a bit of a sinister atmosphere. But even that is done in sort of a jolly and approachable and not very scary way. So if you're a timid soul, you can listen to this one as well as the Bartók. So there's another VC Friday in the can. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you all had a splendid Thanksgiving and got together with family and or friends. And hope you find what you want on Black Friday. And I will talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
I wanna be a boss, I wanna be a big boss, I wanna boss the world around, I wanna be the biggest boss that ever bossed the world around.